Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Facebook Live. I'm your host, Jess.
And I'm your host, Lauren.
And today we have brought back once again one of our most popular Facebook Lives, which is a live interview with our hiring manager expert, Kristen. Thank you so much for being here, Kristen. We're so excited to jump into all of this great interview, resume, tips and tricks, all of your great expertise. But before we jump into all of the good stuff, Lauren is going to give us our Facebook Live tips. So take it away, Lauren.
So just quick reminders that we cover every live that we do. Please, if you don't already, like our social media pages and follow along for more content around hiring or job tips, things like that we'll be sharing. So keep in touch with us. In the comments section today, feel free to engage, share things that have worked for you, things that maybe haven't worked so well for you when applying or interviewing for jobs, because we do want this to be a conversation with all of you. Just don't leave any personal information in the comments. If you are currently a Penn Foster student and would like to talk to us specifically about your program or anything more personally, give Student Services a call. That number is 1-888-427-1000. If you are not a Penn Foster student just yet, but are looking to get some skills and education to really kickstart your career path a little bit more, give admissions a call at 1-888-427-6500. So now all that out of the way, today we have an awesome live scheduled all about getting some great insider tips from Kristen, our hiring manager. So Kristen, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what you do here at Penn Foster and share some more about you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I always love being part of this. I've been with Penn Foster for almost 9 years now, and I've worked in many different roles, and I've worked in HR for the past 5 years, working on getting great talent, talking with people about working here, and how to kind of help our employees grow professionally as well. So I'm happy to be here, happy to share some tips and tricks. I just spent the morning doing interviews, so I'm like on my game, ready to talk about what things I can help with, what things I can, tips I can give you for things to steer away from, and that sort of thing.
We'll ask you for some real examples on what's working well and what's not as you're chatting with people live. So as part of what we'll cover today, here's what's on our agenda. We'll ask Kristen about what hiring managers look for when considering applicants and reviewing resumes, how to prepare for a successful interview, whether that's online, on the phone, in person, what skills employers are looking for right now, some resume advice, and just generally what she would say to students or graduates searching or applying for jobs right now. So without further ado, we'll get into our first question. What do hiring managers look for when considering job candidates?
Well, if it's just looking at the resume, they only take a few seconds. It's important for you to know they're only taking a few seconds out of their day to look at a resume, maybe 5 or 6 seconds to look through a resume. So what they're looking for is what kind of jobs you've had and how it relates to the job that they're posting. What kind of skills you've had, where you've worked, possibly any volunteer work you've done, and just try to get a good overall understanding of where you've worked and the kind of skills you're bringing to their role that relates to the role they're posting. That's in a nutshell, on paper, what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think that remembering that they're looking through tens and possibly hundreds of applications for any given job, and knowing that they're mostly just kind of skimming through and trying to look for those like key buzzwords. I don't know if that's the right term, but like, if they're looking for specific skills or things like that, they have those words or those phrases in their mind that they're skimming through these resumes to look for. And I'm assuming that that's probably how they separate like possible interview candidates from definite no's if they're lacking certain, specifications or skills that the job requires.
Right. So if you look at that's exactly right. If you look at a job description and you have some of the skills that are listed on that, it's best to include those keywords, those same skills, if you have them, on your resume so that it'll stand out. Also, it's important when your resume is looked at that the format is easy to read. You have your skills laid out in bullet points versus paragraph format. So it should be a format that is a font that's easy to read, not too wordy. And one page is primarily, like, ideally the best if you can, because again, they only have a few seconds to look at it. They have a lot of resumes to look at. So they're looking at, what jobs you've had and how it can relate. So if some of those keywords from their job description can be on your resume to help promote that for yourself, that would be very helpful in catching their eye as well.
So speaking of relatability, a lot of people who are looking for jobs might be applying to a bunch at once. How important is it that they really do their research in advance when tailoring their resume or a cover letter? How should they be thinking about tying the company mission or the job description into what they're doing? But of course, keeping in mind, if you're applying to a lot of jobs at once, you want to simplify the process. Like, what do you think is most important when it comes to research?
So before you interview anywhere, you'd want to do their research. If you're applying for the position, look at them, know what you're doing as well. But it's also good to have a couple variations of a resume. If you only have one resume, that's okay. But make sure that your resume is fully encompassing of everything that you can provide. But when you're, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so this might be a little bit like
All
this
good.
today. So, so when you're applying for the role, it's good to have different resumes for different jobs. But if you don't, that's okay. You can create a cover letter to tie in what you've done, how you can relate to what they're. I'm sorry. Let me just get a drink real quick.
Take your time.
So to tie in, so if you have a cover letter that is addressed to someone at that company, pointing out something about their mission or their work that you can relate to, or something you've done similar to that or interested in that, that would help. So being able to write a good cover letter that's concise, maybe, a paragraph that explains who you are, what you're looking for, how their company is exciting or interesting in some way, and how you could be a fit for that company. So that's a good way if you don't have different resumes.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, especially now, some places ask for cover letters, some places make it optional to upload a cover letter. But I think it's a really smart thing to kind of have in your back pocket, even if specifically for if you don't want to create separate resumes for different jobs, you can, upload your standard resume across the board and then write or edit your cover letter to fit each individual organization or business or whatever you're applying for, to help you stand out a little bit, because you're keeping your resume a little bit more generic. So I think a lot of times people are like, do I need a cover letter? Should I not have a cover letter? But that's a really good pro for having a cover letter. I think that that's a really great tip for everybody here to have. So once you have your resume, your cover letter, you've submitted, you've applied to jobs, you get an interview, right? What do you think are your biggest tips for preparing for a successful interview?
So the first thing is, and we'll go back to doing research, research on the company, right? To make sure. There's a lot of people that I talk to that don't even know what they've applied for and don't know anything about the company. And that, I will tell you, is very off-putting. If you have an interview scheduled, at least go and look at their website. Get a little bit of an understanding of what do they do? What products do they offer? How do they service people? What is their mission, right? How many people do they have working there? Get a good idea. And you might not be able to tell how many people, but how large of a company is it? How small? things that you could ask in the interview, right? Things that they're going to say, how much do you know about this job or this company? And if you can at least say, I looked at your website, it looks like you're doing interesting things, a sentence about what they do. So they know that you know what they do. When I call people and they say, I know you're a school, I know you're a college, I know you're a high school, I know it, they at least looked at our website. They at least know what we do, how we help people. So that's one of the very first questions I ask. That can really help you set you aside is not only do I know your company, but I'm also excited to work at your company. And here's why I'm excited to work at your company, because I have these skills. And on my resume, you'll see these skills. And here's how I performed these skills. And here's how I was successful at these skills. So be prepared to talk about the company a little bit, have a question about company culture. How many employees work there? What would you say is what makes the company successful? What are some things that you don't like about work? Like different things that you could ask them to really engage them. And then talk about, they're going to ask you to kind of walk through your resume. They may not say it in that way, like, oh, let's walk through your resume. But they're basically going to have you talk about what you've done that relates to the role that they're talking about. So in my case, I'm talking to people a lot today about being on the phones and helping students. So I'm looking for people who have been on the phones, have helped people, who can work on the computers. In some roles I'm working on, I'm looking for someone who understands Excel. So think about, before you go into your interview, think about how you want to present yourself, what kind of pitch you want to do for yourself, what kind of sale are you going to make for yourself? Because you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. They're going to be looking at your body language, how confident you feel, if you are motivated and you want to work, right? If you say that you just want any old job, or, I'm just looking for a job, I just need some money, you're not going to stand out from, everybody wants a job and wants money, but you're not going to stand out from the person who's like, I love this. I think you're doing great. I'm really excited. I can't wait to start. It's different, as a different feel.
I have two immediate follow-up questions from what you just said.
Okay.
The first one is, you talked about the interviewee asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it that if you're going to an interview, you have questions prepared for the interviewer?
Very important. Not right off the bat. Don't just start asking a bunch of questions, because they're going to ask you questions. But you do want to be able to ask questions, and you should ask questions. It's always good to ask at least one question. If you can't think of anything, if you're like, oh, they went over everything, I'm overwhelmed with what they even said, I can't think of one question to ask them, I don't know anything. You ask them what the company environment is like, what the team is like. Are they supportive? What are my peers like? How is the training and onboarding? How much training do I get? Those kinds of things that make you seem invested, engaged, and interested in learning the job and being successful at the role.
Yeah,
But
I think you always get that.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, Kristen, I was going to say, you always get that at the end of an interview. They say, do you have any questions for me?
Mm-hmm.
And I have been stuck in that position so many times of not having a question. So I think having questions like, what is the company culture like? What is the environment like? How big is the team I would be working on? Like, having those couple questions in your back pocket, just so that when they do ask that question, you're prepared with something. I'm always like, no, I have no questions, because it's usually pretty comprehensive. They go over everything, right? But it's good to have one ready to go.
Or even like, what does success look like in 30 days? Like 30 days from now, if I were to start now, and 30 days from now, what's your definition of success for the role? That's like a pretty good, because that gives you an idea of what they're going to have you do in the first month.
And I think with all of those questions that you recommended, and just having questions in general, it just is another way that you can show you're very engaged in getting this role. You're engaged with the company and you are doing that research. It shows that you care. And I feel like a theme I'm picking up on in a lot of what you're saying, Kristen, is it's so important for the interviewer to know that the interviewee will genuinely care about this position, is committed to the interview, and will really care about the role, because that probably is a big indicator of success. So the other immediate question I have from what you said is, as you're walking through your resume or you're asking questions or you're talking about yourself, how important is it to make sure that your responses to the question, so thinking about it more in terms of like a holistic resume, if you're somebody who's done a lot of things, it's probably easy to really get into the nitty gritty of a lot of the things you've done. How important is it to keep what you're saying very relevant to the position? And then like how broad should you go in terms of what you talk about outside of the skills or experience that are super relevant to the position that you're interviewing for?
Great question.
So yeah. In an interview setting, sometimes less is more. Okay? And I mean, like, don't overstay. So you want to answer the question. You want to be very direct and concise about it. You want to elaborate or expand on it when it's going to be a situation where you can prove that you've led a team, or that you've taken a phone call, or that you've problem solved in some way. So kind of giving an example while you're answering the question, but trying not to go too far off the rails from what they're trying to ask you. Because I know sometimes you get in there and you get nervous and you want to say everything right away, right? Say, oh, why do you want the job? I want the job because blah, 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 blah. For 20 minutes, they're talking about how great you are and why you want the job and what happened at the last job. And it can get very overwhelming for the person who's interviewing you. So if you just kind of stick to what they're asking, because then you start overthinking, then you start rambling, and then you're getting yourself flustered and you can't get back on track. So focus on what they're saying. If you need a second to answer it and you're not sure, just kind of repeat the question back. Ask the question to yourself. Say, oh, or just give me a moment to think about it, and then formulate a response. Again, less is more. So try to stick to answering the question as best you can and as relevant as you can to executing the skills that they're asking for the job.
Speaking of getting overwhelmed, I know a question that is always very common and extremely overwhelming is if you get asked about your weaknesses. What do you recommend in terms of how to think about an answer for that? Because that is a super stressful question. It feels like a mind game.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really stressful, and they want to know like the biggest thing that's wrong with you, right? And nobody wants to say that. Who wants to talk about their worst thing? But so think about something that you could really use work on, right? Maybe it's, don't say communication skills to a job where it requires a lot of communication skills, right? So maybe you would want to work on, how to delegate your work better, or perhaps you could handle stress a little bit better when you're at a job. Maybe not say that. Not the way, not the way you handle stress at the job, but maybe you're working on how to handle stress in your life or something like that. So you're not going to want to point out weaknesses that are related to a job that you've done or a job that you're doing. It's more of like a holistic approach to, I'm not great at this one thing and I know it, and I know I can be better on it, and I'm working at it. And that could be anything you want it to be, but try not to make it to be something very relevant to the job that would exclude you from getting the job. Does that make sense?
That's great advice.
I think too, like you said, like if you say what the weakness is, but you reiterate that it's something that you've consciously realized about yourself and that you're working on, then, you're not just throwing a weakness out there and saying, yeah, I'm not good at this, but you're saying like, here's what my weakness is. And here are the steps that I've been taking to try to fix that, or, something like that, because at least that ends that conversation on more of a high note than like ending it with, what's your weakness? Here's my weakness. Done.
Right. So it's not that like I'm saying something bad. It's like, for me, I mean, sometimes I'm too direct, right? And I'm working on that, and I know that sometimes I need to be a little softer about things. Like, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that it's something that I can improve on, right? And I know it. And so that could be one of my weaknesses. So it's not something that's going to highlight you as bad, but something that it's more of a self-awareness question. Are you
Mm-hmm.
aware of anything you can improve on? Because everyone has something to improve on.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that statement. I think that that is very, very helpful advice. So that was a really, Lauren, I'm glad that you asked that question because I feel like that's something a lot of people struggle with when it comes up in an interview and you don't know what to say and you want to be like, no, I do have
Absolutely.
flaws, but you can't think of anything. And then you're like, and it's always a little bit stressful. So I think that that was a really good question. Um, so moving on from the successful interview prep, what do you think, obviously I know we do this live once a year and things change in terms of what employers are looking for. But
Mm-hmm.
what, in your opinion, are some of the, big skills or, areas of competency that employers are looking for now in 2024?
Customer service, um, people skills, being able to work with people and help people, technology skills, like knowing Microsoft Word, knowing Microsoft Office, and Excel, those kinds of skills, um, and just anything that IT education. There's a lot of opportunity in those fields,
I have a
and
question.
healthcare as well. Sorry.
So, no, it's okay. Just when you're sharing so much great advice, so it's making me think of more things. So, I feel like if you're putting together a resume or in an interview or whatever, it's tempting to focus a lot on like the hard skills that are required for a job. But then a lot of like what you're talking about, well, not all of it, because I would say like IT, Microsoft Word, Office is more of a hard skill.
Mhm.
But like the ability to work with others, to be organized, to be on time, are those more like soft skills. I Some of those, I know I can speak personally. I feel like I'm tempted to think that it's more obvious to have some of those soft skills. What do you think the importance is of highlighting, or I guess what's more so the question I think would be like, what is the balance of focusing on your hard versus soft skills?
I mean, I think you want them both on there, right? If you're good at working with people, which almost every job has to work with people, either your peers, your colleagues, your customers, whoever it is. Um, good good people skills needs to be on your resume. Not in those words, but customer service, being able to communicate properly with people and professionally, and being able to relate to humans, to other humans, is a huge thing. So when you're in an interview, whether you're in person or on a video like this, or in person or on the phone, everything you're doing, if you can see me, it's my body language. If you can hear me on the phone, it's how I sound. So when I call someone, my first phone call is just a phone call. It's not even a video. So I'm trying to judge them on what they show me on their paper, but also what they're saying, how they're saying it, what kind of inflection they're using. Do they seem excited about the job? Are they happy to talk to me? What is their demeanor? Like, what is their personality like? So all of these things you're thinking. And when I'm looking at a resume, I haven't talked to the person yet. So if I see they have customer service and and the hard skills, the technology skills, if I see all of that, that makes them more well-rounded. So they're able to come in, learn on the fly, get up to speed and go. So yeah, I think it's you put everything you can on there to help highlight your skills.
Kind of going off of that, what are some ways to convey that you're a good culture fit for the organization? Showing maybe versus telling. Like you were talking about certain skills and saying, like, don't put like, I'm great at talking to people. You want to say, like, you have strengths in customer service or strengths in teamwork skills, things like that.
Yeah.
So, how can you kind of prove that you'd be a good culture fit without saying I would fit in great here.
Yeah, and you could even add a sentence in your resume that says, comfortable working in a diverse group setting,
Mhm.
collaborates well with diverse peers, something like that. Showing that you're involved and volunteer in different kinds of organizations will say that without saying it. You talking about how, you have worked with many different kinds of people, the different kinds of things you've done to help people, not just working with them, but your customers and anybody that you've helped along the way, anyone you've mentored. So putting that in writing, collaborating with people or in a diverse setting will help set you aside as well.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to find, like Lauren was saying, that balance of like, how do you convey those skills on a resume that sounds professional without just saying like Lauren said, I'm good at talking to people, but like,
Right.
you can kind of take that and finesse it to make sense for the job. So whether it's like customer service or you're going to be working directly with a team, so it's like interpersonal skills. So you like, but both of those speak to I'm a people person and I'm good at talking to people. But I love the suggestion of like adding a sentence in that actually like kind of lays it out a little bit better, based on who you are as a person, because that's only going to help you stand out amongst all of these candidates that are also probably putting things like, good customer service skills and things like that.
I think if it collaborates well with uh, diverse population or diverse peers or however you want to word it, but I mean, it collaborates well with
Yeah.
diversity. So that's what we're
Cross
looking.
team collaboration, things like that. Like there's definitely ways to finesse those soft skills, I feel like, to make them sound more professional than just like saying them, but they are important. Like Lauren was saying, reliability, able to, if it's a work from home job, being able to be self-motivated, like that's really important. Like I think that there are a
Yeah,
lot of ways to take those things and make them sound, just zhuzh them up a little bit for like the actual physical resume writing part.
right.
As someone
So
who goes through a lot of resumes, are there any trends you've noticed in skills that maybe people are lacking that you think are important? And I ask that because for this audience watching today, maybe that could be helpful in saying, like, if you have X skill, this is something that can really help to set you apart. Or this is something that if you don't demonstrate X skill, it could be holding you back from getting jobs.
Yeah. So one of the main thing is being able to, and I keep saying this, but it's true, is relate to other people and speak to other people in a relatable way and help people genuinely pay it forward to your fellow man. So that's kind of hard to come by. There's a lot of jobs like that, but finding people that actually want to do that and want to pay it forward to people and care about it is hard. So I think what we need to do, one of the things that the hardest for me is finding people that actually want to work and are reliable and will show up. So I would say to you that if you really want a job, do some research on the job. Make your resume an easy format to read. Get in the interview and express your interest in helping others and doing well at the job and the company. And show up. Show up, be there, be engaged. And so I think the skills that America really needs is people to want to work and stay passionate about something and really want to move things forward. So if you have grit, motivation, and the desire to for greatness, it's there for you. There are people who are like looking for it. So I think that's one main thing is just like be prepared, keep going, and remembering that any job you have, you're going to be working with people, and that's kind of the communication with other people is the skill that's going to get you further.
Absolutely. Show you care.
Yeah. And your first step of doing that is when you're talking to the interviewer and you are positive, you're using like positive inflections, you're eager, you're excited. I know a lot of people are probably like we were saying earlier, it's so easy nowadays to go on Indeed or LinkedIn or any of these websites and just like search the field you're looking for and kind of apply to a bunch of jobs, right? Just you're trying to get started, you're trying to find something, but that doesn't mean that you go into every interview like you have another one lined up. Like you should still be eager and excited and showing that person, especially if it's on the phone first. Like you were saying, Kristen, your first interaction with somebody is a phone call. So like you don't even get to see, my bright smile. So I have to convey that, through the phone, and just making sure that you are trying to stay, like you said, eager, have grit, have determination, and really show the person that you'd be great at this job and that of all of the people who applied, they should hire you specifically.
That makes such a difference right off the bat. Is your motivation and your like even just your energy level, if it's very positive and you're like willing to work and want to be part of it, that goes such a long way.
That's definitely sounds like a big green flag. Are there any other like green flags that you would say stand out to you when you're reviewing resumes or interviewing people where you just think like, oh my gosh, this person is awesome. They'd be perfect for the role?
Yeah, I mean it really comes down to what kind of roles they've done and how well rounded they look. Like if they look like they've done some volunteer work and those sort of things. Not saying you should do the volunteer work, but what I'm looking for is people with experience in with the skills that for whatever the role is that I'm hiring for.
Are there,
Absolutely.
going with that, are there any common red flags in people that you've interviewed or resumes that you've seen? Things maybe that we haven't covered that stand out and you're like, oh my gosh, why would they do that?
Well,
Things to avoid.
the thing about I can say about resumes is make sure you use spell check and Grammarly if you can. That's a big red flag. And also punctuation, like just capitalizing your name on the resume and capitalizing things where they should be, using proper punctuation and spelling is huge. Those are huge red flags when I see a resume because remember, you're competing against a lot of other people. So you want your resume to stand out for a good reason. So if you're not great at, writing, you have someone proofread it. Have someone read your cover letter because a cover letter can make or break it as well, depending on how well it's written. So you want to make sure that, you know, that everything is spelled correctly, but also with the format. Back to the format. I'm looking at it for a few seconds. I need to be able to easily read it. I need to be able to tell where you worked and what you've done while you were there. If it's all jumbled up and it's hard to read, I'm just going to look at a different resume. So that's the first. Those are two red flags: is
I have a
spelling and
question
format.
on the resume format. From that, I've seen a lot of resumes where people try to get real fancy and they include a headshot, different blocks and columns. But then I see a lot of people that just do like the classic Word document where the information is in stacked order, not as maybe fancy. I don't know. What do you prefer?
Well, for a graphic design job or a fancy marketing role where your photography, headshots and fancy resumes are great. They show your creativity. But if you're just applying for a job that's not like it's just a regular office job or a regular job that's not in a creative, artsy, or require a photograph, I would leave it off. One, it's taking up space on your resume, and it's a lot of busyness that that isn't really necessary. You'd be better served to put it in a format that was easy to read and more direct. Less is more sometimes in this
Yeah.
case.
Good advice.
Great advice. So I know we went through resume tips, interview tips, green flags, red flags, so much great info. But like, Kristen, at the end of the day, what would you say is your number one or couple top pieces of advice for our students or graduates who are searching or applying for jobs right now?
Well, if you're looking for a job, just get out there and check all the job boards, right? Just keep looking. Put your resume everywhere. Customize it if you need to. Change your words around for the keywords to match it. When you get called for an interview, go on their website and look it up. Know something about them. Even if it's just a sentence. Yes, I know you do this and that. Okay, great. Show your enthusiasm for the job. Nobody wants to work, but you want the job, right? You want to show enthusiasm. You want the job. And here's why you'll be good at it. You have these skills. You have this motivation. You care about the success of the company. You want to be successful. You have a good work ethic. You're going to show up. You're going to be engaged and have integrity in the work and the outcome of the work. I will show up. I'll care about you. That sort of thing. That's what I'm looking for.
It made me think of that TikTok sound where someone asks, like, "Oh, what's your dream job?" And they say, "I do not dream of labor." But to your point, I'm like, no one really like wants to work. But it's to your point, though, if you can, be considerate through the skills you're getting and how you prepare for a job, be really mindful and thoughtful in application and interview process, and land a job or a career path that's fulfilling to you, then you can make some great friends at work and end up in a type of role that really gives you a lot of personal joy, or you could be helping people and that feels really good. So it's important to take this stuff seriously and put a lot of care into it, because what you put into it, you'll get out of it. And at the end of the day, life is short. You spend a lot of your waking hours at work. So you want to make this something that you care a lot about, because this is a big part of your life.
And you have to start somewhere. You've got to get your foot in the door somewhere. So you just start, you put the applications out, you get the interviews, you do the best you can, when you get the job, and that will lead to more opportunities.
Couldn't agree more, Kristen. Thank you for always coming with so much expertise and knowledge, but also being so relatable. Like, I feel like whenever we have conversations with you, I leave knowing something that I didn't know before or wasn't even thinking about, because you work in this every day, but like, you're just such a relatable presence. And I know I speak for Lauren and I both when I say we always love having you on. And this is one of our favorite Facebook Lives to do every single year. So just thank you for everything. You are awesome.
Ditto.
Thank you. I hope it's helpful. I know sometimes I get off on tangents, and today I'm getting over a cold, so I'm like kind of all over the place, but if I can help someone, that's great. So.
No, I believe that you did, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your expertise, real knowledge, and just being really honest with everyone, I think, on what you're really seeing, and not sugarcoating things too much, because at the end of the day, like, your real advice can lead to real outcomes for people. And I think it's important that we all, be real about this kind of stuff. And hopefully our learners and grads can go off, apply for 1 million jobs, and land one great one.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for being here. Thank you all for joining and watching. I know I learned something today from Kristen. I hope you guys all are taking away a lot of great tips and tricks to go into your job application processes. And we will see you next time for our next Facebook Live. Hopefully you'll tune in with us. Thank you. And thank you again, Kristen, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good luck
Thanks,
to you on the job search.
Bye, everyone. Good luck.